My name's Dave Gibson. I founded a website called The Sleep Site about 5 to 6 years ago. My background is as an osteopath. I'm a hypnotherapist, I'm a naturopath, and I found that my clients were struggling with sleep a long time ago. And I started to give them advice as an osteopath and then built it into giving them coaching advice for families. And basically, when I look back on it and my own sort of desire to sleep well or better, it was because I had a mum that struggled to sleep and a father who could sleep in a storm. So they were always arguing about who could sleep better, and that seems to be something that we do a lot these days as couples. And I just got interested in sleep, and particularly these days I get interested in that a lot. My own digital attachment, my own attachment to this thing 24/7. We're all attached to this 24/7, 365 days a year. That theoretically has knocked an hour off our sleep on top of the hour that we lost when Edison invented the light bulb. So what I want to talk today is about our digital attachment and how that affects our sleep and our family's sleep. That's a modern couple in bed. They have tech in bed rather than breakfast in bed. We might all relate to this. And in fact, we do that rather than have a cuddle in bed now. According to the Sun newspaper 2 weeks ago, that's our favorite pastime, having our social media and technology in bed. And part of the issues is that we're trying to cram more into 24 hours than we've ever done before. Deadlines are now easier because we can take this in and out of our rooms. We can take our work with us. We can take it into our homes. We can sit in front of the fire and we can kid ourselves that the alcohol's going to help us switch off. It won't. It will get you to sleep, but I hope you've heard other presentations that will talk about alcohol actually affects your quality of sleep. That was a piece of research that I came across about 2 weeks ago. It was done by a psychologist who interviewed 8 to 11-year-olds. 90% of these children were using the word stress. 90% of these children identified Alexa as their favorite voice to be talked to, and 90% of them said that their parents weren't available because they were always on their phones. Myself included. If you had my daughter in this room, she'd be saying, "Dad, you're always on that talking to clients." We all have a problem with our digital attachment. And it starts in the morning, and our kids copy us. And then as they get to teenagers, they're talking to their peers before they go to school. And we start early, we have food on the go, but we're role modeling use of this device in multiple occasions. We've got it as a modern day pacifier. You get the idea that phones are interfering with our quality of life. And obviously we're going to multitask, but that message is being taken on by our kids. So if there's one message I'm trying to get over, is that this is happening a lot. And they copy us. And we tell them to get off the phone. And eventually, at night, a child with a phone in the bedroom is going to do that. That will keep her awake more than anything else, because nighttime, the light's gone down, but this thing is 140% more likely to keep her awake than had she done that just in a lit room. We're on the go a lot. We have coffee. That's the most traded product in the world after oil these days. And we have fast food. I was listening last week to Greggs. They did £1 billion worth of turnover on food on the go. And we do that a lot. We're short of time, so we're in and out of fast food restaurants with quick fixes. Another piece, I hope you can see that these are swans in front of Tesco's. Another thing that I picked up a couple of weeks back was in Lake Windermere. What happened was that the locals were fed up of the swans being fed chips and crisps and bread. So they put big signs up and they asked people not to feed the swans. But the swans, rather than go back to their normal food, which would have been vegetation, decided that they had to raid the local bins for their fast food. And 2 of them walked 1.5 miles into town to try and get their fix. It's extraordinary, the addiction of fast food. The problem with fast food for sleep is that sugar and fat keeps us awake. And again, I don't know if you picked this up in some of the other talks today, but if you lack sleep, your hormones change. The hormone that tells you you're full doesn't work. The hormone that tells you you're hungry gets you to work more. And all of that switches to something called a cannabinoid system. What this means is you get the munchies. So those of us that don't sleep enough are hungry for sugar and fat, and that then keeps us awake more. So it's a vicious circle that keeps going round and round. And that was one of the last things that I came across, was that parents' excessive use of mobile phones is driving behavioural problems amongst children. That's for certain, that our attachment for this is interfering with our relationships. What's the problem? If I was to go back when I started as an osteopath, if anybody came to me with a sleep issue and sleep deprivation, I would instantly ask them when they had their last child, because that would be what we would be looking at 10, 20 years ago. More often than not, I'm talking now to teachers about their children in their class falling asleep. It's a big issue. They can't get to sleep. More and more children are complaining that they are sleep deprived, but some things don't change. Nightmares, talking to children about nightmares is what I do a lot of. And we all think that that's going to be the nicest way. All of our children are asking for that, but none of us are going to get to sleep. If we were living in Asia, that might fit our model, because Asian families do sleep together and cohabit. But in the UK, we're not going to get away with that or that. That's not the reality. That's not my experience, when myself and my daughter's mum caved in the end and created our own problem going forward. And certainly that's not a solution either. You know, children craving sugar because they've had it all day at night. That used to be me. My sleep problems started when I was a teenager. I was allowed to play in bands at the age of 16, and I used to do that on a Saturday morning. 9:20, still awake, catching up on my sleep. That was probably what we saw 10, 20 years ago, when phones started to come on board. No internet yet, but certainly internet now. So more often than not, our children are crashing out because they've had too little sleep and they're working too hard. I feel sorry for teenagers. There's one thing that I would love people to take out from today, which is the teenage body clock. The teenage body clock shifts by 2 hours. They go to bed late because they are designed to go to bed late. And that's the melatonin secretion of a teenager that kicks in 2 hours later than us. And you can see it's peaking way into the night. Theoretically, asking a teenager to get up at 7 o'clock is the same as asking us to get up at 4. Their body clocks don't do that too well. And certainly, this is the shift of an adolescent time shift. You can see that they're going to bed later. Their normal sleep pattern would be the grey block. They're lacking sleep because they're having to get up at the same time. So they have this sleep delay phase. This was a study that I looked at in Canada. It shows you that 60% of teenagers are getting less than 6 hours sleep, and they catch up at the weekend. 80% of them are getting 7+ at the weekend. And when they were asked about their performance at school, most of them were saying it was keeping themselves awake by working later that was depriving themselves of sleep. So it was the schoolwork and the pressure of the schoolwork that was causing them to lose sleep. And 70% of them said they underperformed in exams because they lacked sleep. That's a hell of a thing for us to take on board. And again, I'd love us to be talking to schools and trying to persuade them to let our teenagers start school slightly later, especially in the exam period. So coming back to what we've got to do, we've got to get back to day being day and night being night. Our circadian rhythm is set up to get to bed when it is dark and wake up in the light. So anything that you can do to help that process, anything you can do to make it dimmer at night, more calm at night, is going to be a solution. And certainly it has to start with us. We've got to set a deadline, we've got to set an example. An hour before bed, ideally all technology should go. And once we've established our own deadlines, once we've established that for ourselves, we've got leverage and saleability to the family. So we can go to our children and say, this is what we're doing, we're all going to do it as a family. So it's a family rule and it's family deadlines. They can vary, but everybody's got to be prepared to look at when they're going to put one of these things down. Equally, educate yourself and educate your children. This is from the Sleep Foundation in the States. It's a chart I use a lot in schools. Why? Because it shows you that the older you get, the less sleep you need. And for a child who's complaining that their older brother or sister is going to bed later than them, it's a great example of showing them what happens over time. All of this is on internet. This is from the American Sleep Foundation. It's a great site. Equally, you can talk about the circadian rhythm. You can talk about how the body's designed. You can talk about our sleep need that increases, and that sleep need is blocked by caffeine. You can talk about the sleep urge, which is melatonin. And that's the bit that interests me the most. That's a blip in melatonin that's designed to get us to sleep in the siesta period. Technically, that's when we catch up on sleep. That's what Mediterraneans do naturally. That's what we've lost the habit of doing. You can talk and educate your children about what happens if they don't get enough sleep. My daughter will tell me that that's what I do. If I've not had enough sleep, I get grumpy and I get angry. And certainly you can reward children by getting to sleep on time and not having that behavior. You can talk to school children about what it does for their mental ability. They can learn better, they function better, they're more creative if they sleep. You can talk to older children about consolidation. It's well now known that our short-term memory when we sleep is dumped into our long-term memory. And if you don't sleep one night, it affects you for 3. So again, getting teenagers to buy into this, talk to them about what sleep means, what it does, educate them and sell sleep. Any athletes in the family would love that chart. It shows you what professional athletes do. All of them get more than 8 hours sleep. Federer's getting 10, apart from Tiger Woods, and we all know what happened to his career. So sleep and sports, athleticism, power of muscles, recovery rates, injuries, we get less of them. Accuracy, we get better with it. Every single athlete will know that sleep is a performance enhancer. This is where I tend to start with families. I start talking about dreams. Why? Because dreams is the fun part of sleep. It's the thing that we can talk about. It reflects our emotions. There's a great book called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, and it talks about dreams being the emotional part of our day, dumped at night and re-rinsed and got rid of all of the bad feelings that we process. So it's an emotional center for sleep. And certainly if our children are having nightmares, it could be a reflection of what's happening to them in the day. And if they're having good dreams, it'll be a reflection equally about what's going on. So talk to your children about their dreams. Get them involved in them, get them to draw them, discuss them. They're a great part of learning about what's happening to them in the day, about what they're experiencing at night. Equally, that's one of my favorite tools. It's called the worry box. It's one of the best ways of teaching children how to manage their anxiety. What you do is you can create this posh way like that, or you can create it out of a shoebox that's covered. Hopefully before the child gets to bed, you start to talk to them about their day, their feelings and their worries. They write them out, they put them in the box, and then you take the box to a place where they want you to take it to. And theoretically, you've taken their worries and then their anxieties and put it in the box and put it away for the night. You come back the next day, and any worries that are still there, you can talk about. It's a great way of teaching children how to dump anxiety when they're going to bed. It's a great way of teaching them how to manage that process, and it sets them up for being better at doing it when they get to our age. Most sleep books will talk about regular sleep time. Why? Because that's what we did prehistorically. The body clock shifts by about 2 minutes a day. So getting to the bed the same time 7 days a week, getting up the same time 7 days a week is what your brain and body expects you to do. Nap time, as we said, we're designed to have naps. Somehow along the way we're taught how not to. You know, if you think about school time, you think about when we're in nursery. Nurseries allow children to nap. We then put them into primary schools, and all of a sudden they're not allowed to nap anymore. Naps are a great thing for teenagers too. Teenagers that are lacking sleep, theoretically you're going to allow them to spend 1, 2, 3, 4 hours in bed catching up at the weekend. That will destroy their body clock. It leads to something called social jet lag. So ideally, get the family into a nap routine, get them to go to sleep the same time 7 days a week. And if they haven't had enough sleep, teach yourself how to nap. It's a great way of catching up on lost sleep. And certainly teenagers, an hour and a half is the maximum that they should be staying extra in bed at the weekends. Where does it start? It starts with us. That's the sleep routine that again I got from the American Sleep Foundation. It was published in the Huffington Post. We set ourselves up as having our own sleep routine. The brain and the body expects and likes habits. So if you get into a good habit, you've got something to sell to the family. So putting technology down, having a relaxing time at night, all key things. And then you can get the buy-in from the family as to their sleep routines. This is all available on the internet, but what I'm trying to say is that families learn, and children learn by copying the parents. Get it right for yourself, you're going to get it right for your kids. They learn from copying. What should a child's bedroom look like? Ideally, it's got lights that you can dim. Ideally, it's clutter-free. That helps with sleep. Ideally, they've got some involvement in choosing their bedroom. Ideally, you don't send a child to their room when they've been naughty. It gives you the wrong association. So creating a sleep haven, talking to them about what they want in the room. Obviously, these days, children will study in their rooms. That's a given. It's their personal space. But hopefully, we start them off with a child-friendly alarm. That's one of the products I like. It's from Lumi. It's a child alarm, and it's a great product because it's a dawn simulator. So you haven't got the bright light and it gets up and gets you going. The other thing I like is one of those. It's a family charger. It means that we all take the phone out of our room at night. 80% of us use those for an alarm. It just doesn't work. We're setting ourselves up. And I've already just got an instant Instagram message. These things just don't go off. Get it bright and early. Get back to a traditional alarm. Try and get your phones out your bedroom for everybody. It has to start that way. In terms of food, ideally we wouldn't have the phones on when we eat. We set ourselves a role model that the children don't. What should you eat for sleep? It's a Mediterranean diet. It's a mixture of things. Magnesium tends to be one mineral that's talked a lot about, but the main thing is try not to have phones anywhere near food. Make it a social time. All of this is all over the internet. This is common sense, but if we set our own boundaries, it's easier to get children to buy into them. I remember doing that with my family. It was really hard to get my daughter to do that. We had to turn the TV off and the phone off to play board games. And equally, we now turn the phone off for a whole day. We have Sundays a phone-free day, and I tell everybody, by the way, I'm not gonna be in touch. That wasn't me doing it, that was my daughter telling me that she was sick of me being on my phone, because that's how I run my business. I'm constantly in touch with my clients. Why? Because they've got back pain and they need urgent solves to the problems, and they've all got issues that I will fix 24/7. But when I'm attached to that, I'm not in touch with my daughter. And equally, try and get a sport in the mix. Exercise and sleep go together. The more exercise we get, the better we'll sleep at night, mentally and physically. So we're talking about digital detachment. We're trying to have space when we're not with our phones. What would that mean? And this is something that I really wanted to share. And this again is through my personal experience of it. This is called continual partial attention. Continual partial attention is the paying of simultaneous attention to a number of sources of incoming information, but at a superficial level. So this was coined in 1998. What it says is it involves skimming the surface of incoming data, picking out the relevant details and moving to the next stream. You're paying attention, but only partially. That lets you cast a wider net, but it also runs the risk of keeping you from studying the fish. And this is well known, this is well researched, that when we're on these, we're not paying attention. It finishes with the state of continuous partial attention can be functional. However, it leads to a higher level of stress in the brain, ours, prohibits reflection, contemplation, and thoughtful decisions. It dilutes efforts to focus and concentrate on the present, effectively paying attention to what one is doing at the moment in terms of shifting to one activity to the other. This connectedness also affects real-time relationships and lowers our productivity levels and leads to overstimulation and lack of fulfillment. It's on the internet, it must be true. But from personal experience, if I put that down, I've got a chance of having a good night's sleep. If I don't, I've got no chance. So what I'm trying to do is to persuade us all is to have times without that. I think we've got enough time to talk about some practical tips. Let me check. Yeah, we've got time to talk about some practical tips. When I look at the things that work best, it's the things that are easiest for us to get hold of. Breathing and tension seems to go together. One of the simplest ways with any child is to get them to breathe out for longer than they breathe in. That works because it affects our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So simply breathing in for 2 and breathing out for 3, we'll feel relaxed. And it's an easy way of getting children into controlling their breath. You don't have to do anything more than that. In terms of the other thing, you've got 2 types of people. You've got feelers and thinkers. For feelers, what I try and get to do is to take that and do something physical at the same time. So for example, if you imagine somebody turning around to you and saying, you look stressed, relax. You can't. You know, how do you physically make yourself relaxed? It's almost impossible to. But if you make yourself tense and then relax, it's easy, because I know that that's what tension feels like, and when I do that, I can feel relaxed. Combining it with the 2 things together is probably the simplest technique you can teach a child. So what you do is, and we can do it together if you want to have a bit of audience participation, if you close your arms into a fist, squeeze it as tight as you can, breathe in for 2, breathe out for 3, and as you do that, let your hands go, and you'll feel your body relax. The simplest way of teaching children how to relax at night is to do that in combination with them moving their body bit by bit. So they start off by curling their toes, they start off by then going to the calves, then to the thighs, then to the buttocks, and you move up the body bit by bit, breathing in, holding the breath, and breathing out longer than they breathe in. It's a great way of getting them to relax. It's a great way of encouraging them to self-soothe. By all of the techniques that I've ever used, that one on somebody or a child that seems to be better at feeling themselves and holding on to tension, that's by far the best one. Don't get your children to count sleep. It's well known these days that doesn't work. Instead, get them to meditate and think about something they enjoy doing. So for my daughter these days, it's going shopping. So we talk about going shopping, and she'll go shopping. She'll imagine that she's going shopping rather than focusing on her life. And by that way, she can distract herself mentally. 60% of us are caused awake by stress. 70% of children, it's stress. It's their minds that keep them awake. So teaching them anything that's simple will work for them, combining that with their breathing. So getting them to close their eyes and just imagine doing what they want to do. And that would be it. So, digital detachment for all of us is the key. And I guess we've got time for some questions, have we? Got time for questions? Got 5 minutes. So the question was, how do you deal with a child that's frightened at night and won't go to sleep on their own, yeah? First thing I always say is fantastic. Magnificent, I love you, you're an animal, you wake up in the dark and you're scared, that's perfect. So first thing I do is to say they're great and to give them permission to be frightened. And most parents sort of look at me and go, what? And I go, great, you're scared, you're supposed to be. The dark is scary, fantastic. Now we've got to teach you how not to be. So first you acknowledge where your child is at and go, you're great, no problem with you being there whatsoever, that's fantastic. Now we've got to work out how you can do this on your own. So you give them permission to have whatever fear it is. So it's great, well, you've got a great imagination, lovely. Why don't we draw that tomorrow? Why don't we do, so you engage the child and you say, this is okay to start with. And then you start to try and unpick it. Is it something imagined or is it about the room? And you teach them how to deconstruct their own fears. A lot of what I do with children is through hypnosis. So I'll talk about the dream and I'll deconstruct the dream and I'll make them think of something that's friendly rather than frightened with their dream. So for example, I had a child and he was frightened of a yellow and green clown with a really nasty face. Now I thought he was going to say the face was the bad bit, but he got scared when he saw the green and yellow gown. Now I know the Brazilian football team is green and yellow, and I know that he was into football, so I instantly said, can we make him a footballer? Yes. So instantly I'm giving him control of the dream. So we're trying to get him to imagine that it's great, you've got this really great imagination, and that is scary. How can we make this less scary for you? So give him permission to be who he is as he is on that moment. Tell him fantastic, because animals in the dark should be scared, but we know that this is all imagination, and your imagination's great, we just got to try and reprogram it for you. So you try and give him permission. For example, I had another child that was thinking that the room could change, that the room was sort of growing on it. So we got her to remember where the room was, draw it down, so that she could mentally do it at night. Another child that had somebody big coming into the room at night, and well, what is it? And it was a big man. And then eventually we got down to the fact that it was a problem that she'd had because she'd had a big man come up to her in the street. So it's trying to get to the bottom of it in lots of different ways. But certainly I can have a chat with you later and see if I can help personally. Thank you, it was a great question. The question is, what happens when an older child gets frightened? It'll often be through watching your relationship with the younger child changing. So they will want to be the younger child, so they'll want to be the center of attention again. And they're great at manipulating that jealousy. And sometimes you have to start again. You can't turn around to a child and say, don't be who you are, you're grown up now, don't be like that. They feel really, they're not allowed to be this way. You've got to say, fantastic, what is it that you really need from me? And they won't be able to explain it, but you've got to guess that they are jealous and that they're trying to duplicate what they're seeing their younger sibling get. And sometimes what you do is you have to start again. You have to literally allow them to be that age and go back to being a 1-year-old and then grow them back out of it. But you start off from a place where you know that you're trying to build back from. And I was giving the example of the child in bed with the parents. I don't live with my daughter's mum anymore, but that was a big issue for us because I wanted it one way and she wanted it the other. And getting both parents on the same sheet of paper is a key to all of this. So you both agree what you're going to do and what you're going to do when it goes wrong. And children are great at playing one off against the other, and they'll go for the soft option. So having consistency is key, knowing the boundaries are key, and knowing that you've got to be in the child's shoes and then encourage them back out of it. So that's a common thing with a younger sibling coming on board. It's probably that. In the bedroom, improving sleep in the bedroom is to do with light first. So blackout blinds. Our circadian rhythm is driven by light first. By all things, and it's almost like what you do before you get into bedroom. So having the lights dimming down before you get in, having the bedroom that's only there for going to sleep would be an obvious one. Looking at the temperature, we're supposed to go to sleep in something that's a little bit cooler than we think, and again looking at the noise. But generally it's about light. It's about having the light go down before you get into bed, and it's having a routine. And the brain expects a routine. If you think about how you teach a baby to sleep, it's all about the rigidity of the routine because they haven't got a circadian rhythm. So you're trying to get them into sleep. For us, it's about the repetition of it. And most of it's about trying to get to bed and wake up at the same time. And if you can't do that, start up with waking up at the same time. But at least get part of it settled. But rooms are more about light than anything else. We're about done. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. Thanks for listening. Thank you.